Okay, it is 11:08. Apologies for the delay. I'm calling to order the November 17th meeting of the Woodstock Finance Committee. The agenda is to discuss our priorities for strategic projects for 2024. Before we do that, are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Hearing none, are there any citizen comments? Again, our practice has been to just allow citizen comments throughout the meeting, time permitting, so. Okay, hearing none, we can turn to our agenda item. So you each should have the link. I'm sorry we can't project it here. It's our setup is a little changed today. A spreadsheet with 2 tabs, which list the mostly strategic initiatives for the Finance Committee to focus on, and we have a consensus process where we sort of voted on what or indicated what we thought was most important. And I've highlighted, 1 was the ones that we definitely wanted FC involvement, 3 where we didn't, 2 in the middle. And I've highlighted the ones that are 1 point something, anything less than 2, basically. Most of them are less than 1.5. In fact, sorry, 1.5 or less, what I highlighted. So I think maybe what we'll do is just go through the list, just briefly mention each one and see if there's any concern or question, if there's any others that are really important that we've left out. But hopefully we don't expand the list by much or at all.
Sorry, I do have a process question. I'm assuming that, not sure if Eric is to give his opinion to each one of those, or when we finish the discussion, he'll tell us if he agrees or not. That's one. Secondly, for those that would be sort of not deemed a priority for the Finance Committee, we are okay if we say we recommend this actually be done, say, by somebody on Eric's staff, if he's okay with it, and if it's not a lot of work, right?
I think I would say that second point is a second step for us. I would not want to go. I would want to make sure that we go through all the yellow things first, if that's okay.
Okay.
Just to make sure that we know what we're doing, and then, I mean, Eric has this list. It's fine with me if we talk about the others, if time permitting. But I just want to make sure that we're, we end this meeting hopefully with at least a start towards our annual agenda effect. Does that make sense? Yeah. And Eric, why don't you just comment as we're going through the yellow ones? If you think that if you have I guess the way I'd put it is, if you have a concern about us doing this, tell us.
Yeah.
If that's all right, Kareem?
Yeah, okay. I was just thinking about the second one because it's done. We can just hand it over to Eric and he can decide to do what he wants with it, pretty much.
The second one.
The insurance premiums.
Yeah.
Oh, you're on the Finance Committee page. Okay, sorry.
That was emailed 2 months ago, I think, actually.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so let's just start with the Finance Committee initiatives. The financial model, I think we've most of us have, well, I think we've agreed essentially to do that. And I still have not made any progress on it, but I will. I am working to collect various inputs and so forth. I think the next, we have the education model, and we're about to get the water company model.
We're getting the water company model
from the team, from the water company team, from Stewart and the HBS team. Yeah. So those 2 major projects the sensitivities on those, we include them, we don't, we buy, which options and so forth will be part of the model. And so you'll be able to build scenarios around that.
Are they building a scenario that looks at users and all town residents?
Yeah. The who pays for it, in other words. It's a 15-minute addition to the model that they've built. I don't know whether they're adding it in, but we can add it in. It's very easy. Their model basically says this is what it costs each year to have water, and they are building a model that talks about how the fire hydrants versus the residential users, that split is in there. But then the question is whether people who aren't residential users but are residents would pay some portion of it.
So we could put that in as
we can add that in. Yeah, absolutely. They may put it in.
I believe the current model has a set fee for the cost of the water company,
Mhm.
and that is factored into the rates. So I think we went over yesterday after the confirm, but I think the way they have it right now is it would just be paid by the users, is the way that their models is set up. But we can obviously get in there and mess around with it and make it some difference.
Yeah, it's not messing around with it much. It's just taking one of
It's
their
important.
outputs and dividing it. Yeah, no, I understand. And for the finance committee, it's, I think they have specifically said they're not going to deal with the issue of who, of
Okay,
which users pay for it, I
Right.
think, but maybe
The
that's
Harvest will
right.
know, yeah, the Harvest will
right.
not get to that now.
Yeah. Okay, okay, I'm just gonna keep going until someone raises an objection.
No, I think the financial model is
Okay.
a good idea.
All right.
It'd be very useful
So-
for us.
Benchmarking, we've talked about benchmarking, you know, how we do it and when we do it is a different question, but I think we've talked about trying to do benchmarking. The water company, provide support and analysis recommendations for purchase and funding. I think, yeah, that really is incorporating it into the model and running the model ourselves and saying this is the implications and what we think about those implications.
So can I ask a question on that?
Yeah.
So let's say we're at the point where the Harvest School has kind of finished their project. The working company is gonna be meeting, in a week and a half to prepare a recommendation for the select board. So at the point, if the select board decides to pursue purchasing the water company, what type of analysis recommendations can the finance
Right.
committee provide? So let's say in a world where the vote's gonna be on town meeting day. So we're talking December 10th to March 5th, whatever, like what could actually be done
Right.
by this committee in that short period of time?
Right, so I would hope that I mean, what we agreed with the select boards prior to your arrival was that on any significant one-off issues, this would absolutely qualify, that the finance committee should have an opportunity to give their
Mhm.
recommendation to the select board, presumably before, or at least concurrently with the select board hearing it.
Okay.
Because in the past, what they said is, well, has the finance committee seen this? So to avoid that,
so we have a week and a half.
Yeah.
From the model to the meeting.
So the working committee is meeting Tuesday, November 29th. And depending on how long that meeting takes, and depending if there's a decision after that meeting, the plan is to then schedule a special select board meeting with the select board, with this being the only thing on the agenda. And the work committee then presenting their idea to the select board.
So we need some time between those two meetings and the finance committee.
Yes, and I don't know if the select board will make a decision either at that time. The decision could be at that meeting to hear what the work committee said, and they could then say, let's take to the finance committee to
Right.
pursue it as well. So that might be a conversation we have to have on what the timeline looks like.
What the financial conclusion is gonna be is that it is much less expensive, it is less expensive for the town to purchase the water company than for a private company to purchase it. And the reason is pretty simple. The town has access to lower cost capital and isn't gonna take a profit. Or it's really access to capital because the profit is in return for the capital. And so, and that lower cost, and it's material, is going to be traded off against, I don't know, a desire not to buy it or a concern about running it or owning it or uncertainty or whatever it is. But
So
Yeah.
so the select board could say, we want to buy it, now let's work out how we pay for it. And then it can come to the finance committee.
Yeah, as you know, when you have 5 people make a decision, anything can happen. So there are a lot of options that could happen. It could be, yes, it's a great idea, let's have it in the ballot in March, we all agree, we think we should buy it, but let's have the finance committee look at how it should be paid for. Also, we'll have the finance committee look at what should we actually be doing, not only purchasing, but are there any repairs that we should do immediately after purchasing it? It could be, we don't think this is a good idea, but let's see what the finance committee has to say, because maybe they can change their mind. We're working on the assumption that if it's approved for purchase, that would happen in March. I don't know if that's a reasonable timeline or not, because holidays mess things up, obviously. But to be honest, I think as the work committee has gone through this, work with the finance committee has not really been a talking point in this yet. It's been gathering information, working with our
Yes.
business school,
Yeah.
and going from there.
I think that's fine. I think what you described is fine. I don't think we should try to, I think we should take the time. We should do this properly or not do it
Well,
at
the
all.
only thing I'd be worried about is, the conversation on the street.
Yep.
Which is if the select board make a decision to buy it without addressing the who pays, then rumors fly.
Would it go to a vote?
Yes, it has to.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
it's-
right-
sorry.
Right now, there's
Eric and then Kareem.
a sewer ordinance that says users pay for any capital costs associated with the sewer
Is that-
program. Yeah, so that's why Southwest Sucks paid by all sewer users. The sewer ordinance that's in effect currently. So when it comes, so there is nothing at all about a water company, because we don't have
A water company.
a water company. So I assume we mirror the sewer ordinance to some degree. But what Jill is saying is, would it only be water users who pay for the whole acquisition fee, or would it be the town as a whole? that
I was
pays for it?
hoping that the water would be a model for this one.
Or vice versa, yeah. But
But-
that's a conversation the select
So-
board has to decide on who would actually be.
Well,
paying.
Sewer is contentious.
It's totally contentious. and There's $18 million coming up.
So if I could,
Great.
just in the interest of time, if we could focus more on process than on content, which I think we're trying to do. I do believe, though, that if the select board decided to create a finance committee, is that they feel that we have some value add. And I believe that whatever is submitted to the select board for them to look at should be at least submitted as well to the finance committee for us to take a look at it. And even prior to the meeting, we'll figure out a way to meet so that we see if we can reach a consensus on what we think about the study. And either we provide our talking points to the select board prior to their meeting or during the meeting when they decide to get together. If we see things always after the select board sees them, I don't really see the value that we're adding to the town.
I agree. The finance committee doesn't need to exist if that's the case.
Yeah.
And I think, by the way, we sort of slipped a little bit on the budget as well, because I think I heard you say that you had sent out the department head
Department head.
requests.
This is the dream scenario for
Yeah.
all of them.
But I think as a matter of process, even if we don't discuss it, you should, if you don't mind, sending us copies of what you're sending to them so that you and we can say, yes, we've received it, So I think we should tell the truth and say, we received it. We haven't come to any recommendation yet.
Yeah.
Which is fine. And, I mean, it would be nice to be able to, I think in the case of the water company, there's a pace and a sense here. I mean, Tom, you can talk about how long it takes to float bonds, but I don't think we're gonna be able to buy it by March. But I also don't think we need to. I think the decisions need to be made and then they'll.
Yeah.
I agree, Tom, but I think there's one very important thing. There's a complete distinction between the sewer and the water. The substantial part, roughly 50% of the 10 million over the next several years, is for the fire hydrant system, which benefits all of the citizens. So there's a logical procedure whereby the water distribution for residential and commercial entities are paid by the users, and the fire safety element is paid by all of the town and village. And I think it's going to be very important, as picking up on and Jill's implicit in her comments, I think it's going to be very important that we very early on have an opinion as to whether we like it, which I hope we do, because I think it's important. And I think we should point out the differences in the fire hydrant, fire safety element, and the distribution element, suggesting that there should be a differential in how it's paid for. I think we should do that well before the any kind of a vote of any sort.
And I think in with time I have a hard stop at 12. I think we agree that Francis should be involved.
Yeah.
Water company. I think that's. I think we can.
So we'll figure out how to do it.
Process.
Tom, just so you know, that model, that distinction, there's there's some vocabulary here that may be confusing, but that distinction between fire hydrant and bath and residential sinks is already built into the model. The fire hydrants will be paid for by the town. And how those prices are set is, how those prices are set, and particularly how those prices would be set if the town owned it versus if a private equity company owned it. I mean, the people can drill wells, I think. The town can't drill wells to run the fire hydrant system. If I was a private equity company, I know how I would price the fire hydrants. I would give the water away free to the residents, and I would charge the town as much as, because the town has no choice.
Then
So
it would go on tax.
Sorry?
They would all go on tax.
Yeah, well, which means everyone pays for it, yeah. So the question, the choice of who decides who pays for it is tied up in the question of who owns it. Because, yeah, anyway, we'll come to this. We agree that we should be involved. And then the same thing, I think a similar type of role for the main wastewater plant, again, on the assumption that there's going to be a team. We're not going to be the team that analyzes it. We're going to be the team that responds to the team that analyzes its analysis. In other words, in the same model of the water company. I presume that there'll be a similar team. Maybe the team is external or consultants or whatever, but yeah. So, and those being the big capital items. So let's just keep going. The other yellow ones. So the bidding consortium about salt, hard pack materials, those things, regionalization. The bidding consortium, I think, is a shorter term opportunity. The regionalization is a longer term opportunity. And then we voted for collectively, meaning financial software.
Sorry, what are we looking at now, John?
Sorry, we're now looking at the department head initiatives.
Okay, I would rather we go back. I want to make sure that those that we're not looking at, I just want to make a quick comment that we do agree that for the health insurance, Eric, this is with you. You decide what you want to do with the presentation, correct?
Yep.
What are
Okay.
you looking at?
And he's going back to the first page.
Yeah. And then I just want to raise a question because it's a 1.8. So I know you decided there was a cutoff at 1.5, John, but the charging owners for empty buildable lots, I think this is a revenue opportunity that we should not completely ignore. So I'm wondering if somebody needs to own looking at this. I don't know if it's planning and zoning or somebody.
But you're
Just
the only one
because-
who gave it a number 1, Kareem. So how about you own it?
Well, I mean, Tom was working on it and he gave it a number 2. So, you know, it's confusing.
Well, why don't we, this isn't the end
I
of
mean,
this.
if you know, I mean, Jill, I know you're trying to make a little joke out of it, but seriously, this could raise quite some money and incentivize people to come to Woodstock. So it would impact our financial model. So I just don't want us to just forget about that opportunity.
So me playing ignorance, when you say empty billable lots, are you talking like empty, like land parcel, that kind
Yes.
of thing?
So there's a theory that people buy land that could have houses built on it. And in holding the land without the houses on, they're costing the town money because there's no property tax, the minimal property taxes from them. So maybe you should charge people a property tax rate that reflects what it would be if there was a building on.
It's a
But I
similar,
mean, that goes into appraisals and they can only appraise it, doesn't it? Because that's what property taxes are based off of.
they don't have to be. This is a national, there's a really good,
National
it's a
trend.
national issue. We make it worse in Woodstock with the current use program. Because not only, because we then take the portion that is
Yeah.
attributable to the land and then reduce it
Yeah,
even further.
because Vermont, well, I think that's more of a Vermont why, because that
Yeah,
land
it's
use is
state.
a huge.
Yeah.
huge
So,
one.
so this is an issue. There's a great article in the New York Times about a week ago about
Oh,
the history of this. Look, Kareem, I think we, just to respect the priority setting process that we agreed to, and just given that Tom isn't here, why don't we let's put this on the agenda for the next meeting, and we'll just have a brief conversation when Tom gets back. Maybe he wants to continue to pursue it, or Kareem, maybe you do too. So, I won't classify it as yellow, but I'll
Make it-
won't take it off. We'll just say next meeting.
Okay, so the only reason why I brought it up is because a big piece of the conversation is having more people move to Woodstock, right? So, but anyway, okay. Let's do that.
All right, so it's not gonna, it won't disappear.
Okay.
Okay, so then going to the department head initiatives, the bidding consortium regionalization, the financial software, which is a replacement of NIMRIC and other software perhaps that were maybe just NIMRIC. And then, again, the regionalization of fire and EMS. I think those two ideas can actually be combined.
Well, I was gonna say, I think we can kind of combine a few things.
Yeah.
One is regionalization as a whole.
Yeah.
DPW, fire, police, et cetera. And what are those options for all of them?
Okay.
And then I think kind of just technology updates.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's financial software, whether it's in planning, zoning, whether it's in clerks, and viewing how those changes could impact us, not just monetarily, but also just if there's a way to figure out having these softwares, does that take away, does that increase more time for employees? Does it make the interactions with the public more positive with town hall? And kind of look at those things. I think maybe just two categories.
The only, I agree with that. The only technology part I would take out of that is the planning and zoning request for the software package to do short-term rental analysis. That's a different
Yes.
thing. But it,
Can it be the same piece of software?
no, it's,
And so I could be wrong. There's a bunch of software out there. A lot of them are individual things. I think a lot of them are the goal of to be bought up by larger companies.
I thought Killington was using gov.uk.
yeah, no, Joe, we're talking about two different things. I'm not talking about the software to manage permitting for
Right.
short-term rentals. I'm talking about the software that says you have 119 properties that are for sale this week on Airbnb.
Oh, right.
The spyware, whatever you want to write. That's what the 67. That's
Yeah,
what,
so
that's
that
what this
way,
is.
like for short-term rentals, we can track, you know, if
Yeah, yeah.
they're registered and all the, make sure we're utilizing
Yeah.
fully the revenue. Received.
So there are three of these yellow items, Eric, that would be bunched into the one you're talking about. Utilization of digital copies on the first page, that's in the listers department. On the third page, town records.
Yeah.
And on the fourth page, elimination of paper records. So those all are the same thing, an internal system like a NIMRIC or something like that, interdepartmental use, permitting, business processes, how much time staff are spending.
Yeah.
That's all one group of things. So
Yeah.
let's just combine those into technology.
So, sorry, so the financial software is a risk to the budget. It's not, unless it is also an opportunity. I'm not quite clear. But what would be our role? Is it because it encompasses all those other things that you just mentioned, John, that you feel that there might be a role for the finance committee?
Yeah, I think it has to do with, yes, I think, yes, it's because it can change the work processes, which can change the staffing levels. And I think frankly, giving Eric and Robert some cover
Okay,
to have a recommendation
okay,
that we can do things more efficiently and what the implications of that are would be helpful to them if they
Okay.
agree with Craig.
Yeah, I think a part of it's Nemrick is so inexpensive, anything else is expensive. So what's the cost benefit of making that?
got it.
Are-
Yeah,
Are
got
we
it.
gonna see a difference? Yeah.
Okay,
So then the only other pieces from the department head initiatives that reached the kind of strategic threshold were the software for the short-term rentals. That's on page 2, the education and software. That's the short-term rental.
67, the cost then, or is there some?
67 was the cost of the permit zoning and permitting and the short-term rental, I believe.
Yes.
Sorry, the
Okay,
one
so
right
it's-
below it,
it's-
it's,
Sorry, 30,000.
yeah, it's,
Right.
that education software and revenue should be combined. Because one of them is the plus and one is the minus.
Yes.
Mhm.
So that's really just one idea. And then there's, the.
Jonathan, can I say something?
Yes, go ahead,
It's
Roger.
Roger. I have one very picky point. You shouldn't call it spyware because it's not spyware.
Yeah.
Spyware is a kind of malware that people put on their computers and they are rightly very afraid of it. What you're talking about is something that goes out and searches the individual rental sites. That's not spyware. That's the open web. You're not spying
Right.
on anybody's computer.
Yeah, and it's actually, in some cases, it's not even doing that. It's being provided by Airbnb themselves, so.
Right. So
It's-
I
it's
just would not
monetizing
call
the
it that.
benefits. Yeah,
And then just on, I'm still concerned about the pricing on this. It just seems high to me. And I know that there are companies out there that do revenue share models that also include some of the actual enforcement.
But
And
that's-
on the revenue side, this 120 to 180K increased revenue is great, but the software is not going to do it. The software is going to help an enforcement mechanism do it. So without a plan for a viable enforcement mechanism, that's something more than Dave Green driving around and looking for out-of-state cars,
Or
then
is Vicky like raising things up?
we're not going to get $100 to $200,000.
It's
No, I agree. And Roger, in the new formulation of the finance committee's role, where we're focused on more strategic things, checking out those things, whether we do it or Stephen Bauer does it and reviews it with us we kind of stress test his plan. That's exactly the role of the finance committee, to sort of say, hey, Stephen, you haven't included, either we do the analysis or he does it and we vet it. So that's by putting it in yellow and saying that's a priority. That's exactly the kind of questions we would ask.
Okay, great, thanks.
And then the last item, I guess, is town and village costs. And again, I think we have, or I hope we have agreed, maybe this is just my point of view, that we're not looking at combining the town and the village governments. We're looking at combining the town and the village accounting.
I think we need to agree to that because
Yeah.
to the official merger of the two will take forever, and yet the financial thing can happen quickly.
Right, and it's not our place to talk about governance, it's to talk about finances. So what we would be looking at are ways to achieve the economies of a single entity while still having two entities, which is,
The ones that are allocated, I
we're
mean,
talking about
Timesheet,
changing the,
Yes.
changing the
That would
time
save a lot of
spent on
time.
cost allocation between the departments.
well, it would still have to be allocated.
It does,
So
but
that's.
But
what they
maybe
would-
instead of
That's what they would
allocating it
argue
for
about.
line, you just allocate it some.
They would have to
Yes.
agree on the percentage.
some
Yes.
profit.
We should work on the
So the-
percentages to make them realistic.
Well, yeah. I think. I don't wanna. I don't wanna like mention consolidation because it's something that's Brent brought up, but like, if you're gonna merge the accounting of it, like, why would we stop there? Why wouldn't we just? I mean-
Because there's other functions besides accounting, like, for example, who should be deciding the policy for permits on the green?
Oh, I'm not saying we need to eliminate select board versus village trustees.
Well,
I'm
that-
saying they can each have their own role, but as far as accounting, I don't see a real, I see the benefit, like, I don't see,
A reason to keep them separate.
correct.
Right, that's exactly
Yeah,
why this is
yeah.
on here. Right, we all,
So that's the intention, make it all one, then do an annual allocation and cut out a ton of work and enact.
yeah, or some other way of, or basically looking at the process by which we allocate so that the process doesn't cost us anything,
Mhm.
in effect, or costs us very little. Right now, it costs us more than very little.
Does that fit with your idea?
Yeah, I'm just thinking, a lot of things going through my head, just trying to,
6 steps ahead.
yeah.
So that's it.
Exactly.
So those are the list of issues that we would focus on. I do think, by the way, that we have proceeded down this path. I'll speak for myself. I'm comfortable with this path of being strategic. I don't know that to what extent we've sort of vetted this, or what extent I know the extent we've vetted it with the select board, which is we haven't. I don't know whether you have. I think we can stand with you. If you have vetted it, great. If you haven't, we can stand with you and say, we thought, I mean, unless anyone disagrees, we thought this was a good path. But I do think that we're going to have to, it's going to come up in the budget discussions that this is our role. And I think now we can say, here are the 7 things we're focused on. And by the way, here are 14 or 18 things we decided not to focus on, in case you're interested. So we're doing our due diligence.
And are we gonna do this stuff by end of December?
2024.
So this
So-
is part of it, this would be like step for 2025, like for the department heads, that's what we're looking at as the 2025 budget. So
I think-
Start,
I think for these issues, it's talking to the select board and the department heads. I think the decision maker here are Eric and the select board.
Do,
Not that the department heads would be involved.
So, Sorry, so
Yep.
first off, yeah, can I? Yeah,
Scream in the-
so, yeah, because I have to hop off in a few minutes, if you don't mind, just quickly. So I just want to see if Eric's gut feeling, if he's kind of okay with us doing that, and because I can't see if he's nodding his head or not. So, so that's one. And two, I just want to make sure that those that didn't make it on the finance committee list does not mean that these are not projects that should not be potentially looked at by some other groups, right? And it's really Eric to decide what else he'd like to go after, and whether there's anything on the list that we didn't highlight that he feels that we need to focus on. And then finally, sorry, I'm loading this question. Finally, hopefully, given our bandwidths, we can deliver a lot of these or all of them by 2024. But if not, we actually need to regroup and figure out how and who's going to be working on these, right?
Of course, yeah.
Okay.
Eric, do you want to respond on any?
Karma, is your question, am I in favor of these specific projects or just the overall strategic view as a whole?
No, if you're in favor of those, and if you feel that this sort of, in your opinion, fits with the mandate of the finance committee, and did we leave anything out that you feel that we should be focusing on?
Yeah, so I think I like this approach. I think it gives us what we currently lack, which is a vision for Woodstock. I feel far too often we're focused on day-to-day stuff, and we have to just because of our staffing and how we're set up currently. So to have a committee that can actually say, this doesn't have to be decided in 6 months, so we can take a year to look into it, is what we actually really need. So I'm in favor of that as a whole. I think something that did not make the cuts, which I would advocate for, would be the village garage. Just I think that might be an easy lift potentially. I have two things to say with the list. One is my concern is it's a large list, and I mean I think it should be monthly, typically. I won't say you guys can't do it. I have all the faith that you're all very capable, smart people. But I would want to make sure that you guys can, see the project through and make sure that what you take on, you can come back with a recommendation. I don't want to feel that you guys are overwhelmed with 14 different projects happening at once. So I would just, my advice to the committee would be make sure that you can handle everything. So you guys can see it through. And the only other thing I'll say about the list is the one thing I would caution about is, and I've talked to the planning and zoning department about this already. I haven't made my decision on what I'm going to include in my budget to the select board. And obviously the select board can rule anything I recommend. But if I was to recommend the short-term rental software, I'm not going to recommend to the board to consider any revenue from it for the first year for a few reasons. One being none of the new rules will have passed even the planning commission before town meeting. So they'd be voting on revenue for a change that has not been approved yet. Second, it then has to go to the select board trustees afterwards. And that could also fail as well. And third, it could pass the planning commission, could pass the boards, and then for a reason that revenue does not come in to the following year. So I would not want to put the municipality in a position where we blow the tax rates or increase our budget by $100,000 to $200,000 and then find ourselves in $150,000 deficits because the money did not come in. My recommendation would be to approve the software with no added revenue. Then if it brings in revenue, and we're in a situation 6 months into next year where we have $50,000 that has come in, and we're expecting another $50,000 to come in, and we see that going forever, then go back to the board and say, okay, this obviously is working. We have extra revenue this year. What do we want to do with that revenue? Is it hire another person? Is it buy permit software, et cetera? So that is going to be my recommendation to the board. So I'll just say it's the finance committee right now. So I don't want you. Now, if we're in a situation where I recommend this or I don't recommend this and it does not approve, I think it would be a great project for the finance committee. They'll actually take time to look at it and say, we're gonna spend 6 months and we'll look at communities that have made these changes, how much they brought in, how that would translate to Woodstock, who would do the enforcement, and think that, yeah, we could make $100,000, and that recommendation could go to the boards next year and with the revenue attached. But that's how I'm gonna approach, just that, that's the
Can
scenario.
I pick up something from that?
Yeah.
So my question was about timing.
Yeah.
Because these are, the planning and zoning is a request for this budget. If we don't start the registration, there is no revenue.
Yes.
So how do we start the registration process without the software?
So, like I said, I may recommend buying the software to the boards, or they also may recommend buying it themselves. But my thing is, I'm not gonna recommend the revenue is gonna be there automatically.
Yeah, but Jill, this isn't registration software. This $60,000 is not registration software.
It's 30,000 for registration, for permitting and registration, isn't it?
It's-
Where's
The
the
permitting is the zoning.
The 67 total is, permanent software, and short-term rental software.
Oh, so it is.
Yeah,
Sorry, I
so it's
didn't see
30
that.
K
You're right.
each.
About 30K, yeah, about 30K.
Right.
About
So,
30K.
so my point is, so I have several questions, 'cause I'm
Okay.
sorry, I didn't come to the meeting.
Okay.
So is not this permitting software part of the same package that we can get for the finance and everything else?
Potentially.
Right. So are we really going to delay that until July 2025?
Which software?
The software package that the town needs?
So I don't know, because I haven't fully gone through the budget and see how much money we have, but it's one of the cost benefits of, are we spending $100,000 in new software or not this year? We talked about Oracle not being there yet, in our conversations with them. So that's a software we're looking at. That's
Oh.
not gonna happen.
Okay.
Because buying Oracle, we still have to keep Nemrick, and so that just won't work for us. I don't know if there are companies that do the accounting stuff we need and the permanent software at the same time. I haven't had to look into them,
Okay.
but there could be.
I'm sorry, I didn't have that piece of information,
Green.
but I'd just make the strong recommendation that planning and zoning has to work out how to do registration, even if they don't have software. It's just on an Excel spreadsheet
Well, also, just, yeah, I
to make the other stuff
agree
work.
with that completely, but I also say that spending 30, I mean, we're talking about 200 permits a year. I mean, I'll do it for 15,000. I mean, I'll do it on index cards. It's not, I mean, at least,
But the future software that we buy will have it in it.
well, these two pieces of software have literally nothing to do with each other.
Yeah.
They-
As of right now, they don't.
They're in the same row on our spreadsheet. That's the only thing that connects.
My assumption,
I'm not disagreeing with you, Joe.
And you guys know this too from your backgrounds. As municipalities take these software programs on, they're gonna be bought up by larger companies.
Yes.
And
Right, and
in
it's-
5 years, you're gonna buy OpenGov and have
Yes.
everything in it.
Yes.
Right, you'll have a module for short-term rentals.
Yeah.
But Jill's point is, I think what you're saying, Jill, is your suggestion is, it's the registration process, whether that's software or not,
Right.
that is the most important thing to start.
That will drive the revenue. So if you delay, there's no point buying any of the AirDNA stuff that monitors what's being out there if we don't sort out our registration.
Well, but I'd almost put it the other way, because if the registrations are vastly below the actual usage. In other words, I think part of the revenue problem is that I'm just making this up, but my sense is that some people think that most short-term rentals aren't registered.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's not because we don't have a registration process. That's because they're not
they
registered.
just have no.
It's because David Green isn't driving around all the
They're fine.
And
It
also-
never comes to planning and zoning office.
time.
And also the fee if you're caught is a fee to
To register.
register.
You're right.
So why would you,
It's
Well-
not, it's a per day charge.
huh?
It's a per day charge, a per day charge.
Well, that was the other
Yes.
thing that Stephen wanted to do was find,
Yes, that's
there was
written.
a
It doesn't
colleague-
have an
if we own
ordinance.
something-
Eric, this is, can I make,
Yeah.
this is exactly the kind of analysis, I think, I don't know whether Stephen's done this or not. If he has, terrific, we could
Yeah.
assume he has. But, and by the way, you could put it into the budget, but it'd
Okay,
be worthwhile to sort this out before we actually
Yeah,
write the
I-
check.
I want to work on this one.
Okay. Give whatever input you have to Eric.
me too.
And, you know, but I think what you're saying is we should not put this one on our list yet until you've made your well, it may,
Yeah, there's like three
Yeah.
steps to this, like, it could be approved,
yeah,
and then we will just see naturally if we get revenue from it next year, and if it's successful. If it's not approved, then it's, okay, let's look into this if it's a good recommendation for next year, you know? But a lot of it's gonna depend if those changes happen, if they get approved by all the boards too.
I think with Joe, with just a very little, it sounds like none of us, including you, Eric, haven't gotten into the details with Stephen about what he's done. He may have answered all these questions and this is a good recommendation, but, okay, anyway. So I think your suggestion is to add the garage. I just noticed that it was only 1.8. Only Jill, you and I voted, Ellen, you said number 3. Is that because you didn't think it was a good idea to sell the garage, or you didn't think anyone needed to do much? We just should sell it.
It sounded like it was almost a done deal,
Right.
so.
I
So
think,
I just don't
Yeah.
see how
We add value.
how we would add value.
Here's how I think.
Okay.
I think the only way I can think of is, again, to give, half of my career was as a consultant. Sometimes consultants take things that are obvious and say that the company ought to do them. And the company says, oh, the consultants told us to do it, that's why we're doing it.
Hmm.
And it helps deflect. Yeah, this may be one of those cases. Now, if the only reason we're not selling it is because of the person, and the person is now retired, then just go ahead and sell it.
That's what I-
What we could do is do some analysis about what we might get from it.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that we.
what's the
What the money might go to, which would be important.
Yeah, although that's not
That's
particularly our
not our
purview.
decision.
We could have a recommendation,
but-
given all the other things that money needs to be.
We
spent
could put
on.
it into the model. We
Yeah.
could put it into, so I'm okay. I'm definitely, I don't think it's a lot of work. If that's the only reason you voted against it, I would, are you okay if we just include it on our list?
Yeah.
And Tom,
Slam dunk.
and, Tom, you didn't, Tom, are you okay? You didn't vote on this one. Are you okay with us including that on the list?
Yeah,
Okay, all right. So I think we have, when we combine things, we have kind of 6-ish priorities, 7 maybe, or maybe 7 or 8, but it's less than 10 anyway. So I would suggest, Eric, to your other point, are we taking on too much work? We don't want to commit to things we can't do. I think our next step is to take the things in yellow, combine the ones that we talked about combining, and talk through at our next meeting. And I realize that that pace of these meetings for the moment is slow, but we've got holidays. Take at our next meeting to develop a work plan for each of these things. Who's gonna, what needs to be done first, and who's gonna do it? Do we need additional resources? Do we want to have working groups with other people in the community? Do we need help from, do we need help from, well, the management team or
I think the answer is
consultants or
yes.
anything else? Yeah, no, I
Well, there
understand.
was also a question about, these are department heads, if they want our help. Are they gonna,
So I think something that I liked what happened with the way we did the transfer this year is that these department heads, they don't have the time
Mhm.
and efforts to do these things. Like if you talk about, regionalization, Mark
Yeah.
Hunter, David Reed, those ones don't have the time to sit around, talk to other communities, spend half the week saying, going back and forth. It's ideas they have.
Yeah.
And they may be viable, they may not be viable, but the whole point of this is when you guys met with them was like, what do you think could happen?
Mhm.
You know? And then, so I think it's maybe on the finance committee to say, this is viable, we could have a sand and salt consortium and save money. We could license out with Hartford for EMS or whatever, or, we can't, it's not gonna.
Or here are their concerns. Can we work with you to see if we can meet them?
Yes,
Or whatever.
exactly, yeah.
There is one idea on here, it's a piece of one idea, because Eric, you suggested combining the technology ones. And there's a piece on here which was not intended really to be shared, much. Well, it's not intended to be taken forward, which is the elimination of paper records in the town clerk's office. I mean, the town clerk is opposed to that, or it's not opposed to this specific idea. It is noted that it is against the law to implement that idea. And the law changed in June, but it's still being interpreted by the state agencies. And so certainly, I know Charlie would say, and I would strongly agree with him, that it's premature to assume that we can eliminate the records.
Hmm.
I'd say
and-
that's probably, that you
It'll-
need to give it.
They
time
said
to-
6 to 12 months
Yeah.
for them to adjudicate what it means. Charlie has never defended the use of paper records other than that it's required by law. So we don't know how he feels about the idea itself. He's always said correctly. And now unclearly, but it's still not, he can't just assume the opposite. So Charlie hasn't done anything wrong. He's said, look, it's my job. I'm breaking the law. We're breaking the law if we do this.
Yeah.
So that's where that stands. But all the others, I think, were suggested by department heads.
Yeah.
Okay, so at our next meeting, then let's develop work plans. And we use it as a working session. We'll probably need 90 minutes. Tom, are you okay with this?
Yep,
Todd or Roger, any comments before we adjourn?
No, good meeting. Thank you.
May I ask one
Well,
question?
all set here.
You okay, Todd? All right, thank you.
Are you envisaging doing anything with the capital budget this year or
What do you mean doing anything?
updating it, putting in new projects, updating all the numbers?
Yeah, we are. It has just unfortunately fallen a little bit low on the priority list, just the way, when we were short staffed and when Robert came on. So we're kind of, with this budget cycle, kind of keeping what we've done in the past. And my hope is come January, we can sit down with the department heads and kind of really flush out the 5-year plan and have something that is following.
Okay.
We're working with a consultant from Nemrick, and they're also advocating for changes to the way we do our capital accounting, which will feed
Right.
into a better capital plan as well.
Are we going to work with Sarah at all?
Right now, we're working with Cynthia from Nemrick. We are working, we had a meeting with Sarah yesterday, and we will work with her.
Great. Okay, I'd cross it off my list as well, because that's on my list to ask the question.
Okay, yeah, anything else? Tom, you're okay?
I'm okay.
All right, can we have a 1, 2, 3, 4? Oh, and Tom Phillips is not here, right? Can we have a motion to adjourn?
I motion we adjourn.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
John, I have to run to a meeting, but thank you for setting up the Harvard Business thing. It's been